Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. It looks like we have a few people still trickling in here. For some of the folks who haven't met myself, I'm Marcus. I'm the VP of Sales here at Codeless ONE. I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar today, Breaking Boundaries with No-Code Workflow Automation. But as we give everyone a couple of minutes here to join the webinar, as I'm sure you're scrambling from one meeting to another, or maybe gather notes. Would love to hear where you're calling in from today in the comments and chat section. I'm currently based out of Toronto, Canada. So if you'd like to share where you're calling in from, we'd love to see where the folks across the world are today. Okay, we have somebody calling in from Lisbon, Portugal. Okay, great. That's a beautiful time to be there right now. Amazing. Okay, and it looks like we have some more folks jumping in as well too. And for the folks just jumping in, we'd love to hear where you're calling in from. If you want to drop a comment in the chat section, Brampton, Canada, amazing, another fellow Canadian. Definitely looks like we have a diverse crowd here. Okay, well, why don't we officially kick things off? Again, welcome everybody to the Breaking Boundaries with No Code Workflow Automation webinar. Really appreciate everyone for joining today. Now, just a few housekeeping items before we officially begin. If you have any friends or colleagues that weren't able to make it today, we're going to be sending out the webinar recording afterwards so you can share it with them. And we want to keep the session as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comment section. If you like using emojis, feel free to use the react button. We want to keep this really engaging. And then finally, your feedback's definitely really important to us. So we're going to be sending out a brief survey after the webinar to get your thoughts and opinions. Okay, so our speakers today, joining us is Asif Sharif. He's the CEO and founder of Modern Requirements and Codeless ONE. Also joining us is Mao, our VP of Product, and myself, Marcus. I'm your host for today's webinar. I'm the VP of Sales here at Codeless ONE. So most of the folks that are joining us today are likely customers of Modern Requirements, and you likely manage your requirements using Modern Requirements and Azure DevOps. If you're an AI enthusiast and you're looking for productivity gains, you've probably heard or you're currently using Copilot for DevOps, which is our AI assistant that's designed to help you elicit and analyze requirements. But the topic of today's webinar is around Codeless ONE, which is our no-code platform that helps you build apps and automate workflows. With that being said, maybe this is a good time to bring Asif on board because Modern Requirements has been a very successful product in the requirements management space for many, many years now. But for some of the people joining, maybe it's your first time learning about Codeless ONE. Asif, maybe you can tell the folks here today, when you first sought out to create and build Codeless ONE, what were some of the problems that you were looking to solve for, whether it be in our organization or in the market as a whole?
Yeah. So when I was young and smart, I used to be a developer. Now I'm dating myself here. Um, the biggest problem we ran into was getting the requirements right because developing systems was hard work. And if you got your requirements wrong, everything went wrong. And from that came out modern requirements. Um, as we built modern requirements and AI was taking off, we started to build Copilot for DevOps, which is sort of the AI assistant to do requirements. But then the question became, what about what if you could build applications almost conversationally? What if you could wish an application into existence? And from that idea came Codeless One. So Codeless One's mission had always been that as a business analyst or a product owner or a business owner, I want to be able to create applications without writing a single line of code. In fact, you should be able to create applications without doing dragging dropping. And the underlying force behind Codeless One is either AI or automation. And those two things come together to give Codeless One the power to create applications, enterprise scale applications, very quickly. You can create a prototype with Codeless One to begin with, iterate on it, make it as precisely what you need, and then you can launch it. And then manage that infrastructure within a cloud. So you don't even have to deploy. You don't. It's managed application from ideation all the way to deployment and beyond.
So it sounds like the vision really was to make application development as accessible to anyone and everyone without the coding experience. That's incredible. So if, since the topic of today's webinar is around automation and workflows, when we talk about some of the things that we've done, as a business owner for modern requirements, can you maybe share some examples of how you've used Codeless One as an automation platform, across departments and what that maybe looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things, the first thing we did is, as we were building Codeless One, is to use it ourselves. And out of that process came our biggest application in Codeless One that's called Customer 360. So what we needed was an application that has data about customers from many aspects. There's the sales team, there's the marketing team, there's the support team, there's the training team, and there are various functions being provided by various people, and there's accounting, and we wanted to have a single view of how information is coming together. But this Codeless One application for 360 application was provided us the ability to not only bring data in from other sources, but also have an application so that many functions which we used to perform previously using Teams or Excel or SharePoint or whatever other things now got consolidated under one umbrella. So Codeless One becomes the place the organization comes together. And there are different views of data and different portals and so on, but a single source of integrated truth. So the data is single sourced and represented to different people based on what they need to do and the rights they've been given. So that's been our biggest project. The other side is to create applications to extend Azure DevOps. So obviously, modern requirements is an extension into Azure DevOps, but what if you want to extend Azure DevOps? Say you want a ticketing system, you want client feedback system. How can you extend it so that the data does come into Azure DevOps, but your customers, your clients, your partners can view and have an application where they can engage with that data, manage their requests, their feedback, their orders, their processes through a single app, but that app in turn will synchronize with ADU as and when needed. Okay. And can I do that in a week and not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars either in SaaS fees over time or building it? But I want to be able to do it efficiently, but have this extensibility at my fingertip. That would be the second use case here, which is really a 360-degree around ADO. Right? So there's ADO, but there's a whole bunch of things that happen around it. How do you bring it together? Project management, customer satisfaction, customer request management, and on and on and on.
That's great insight. I think most of the people here in the webinar today are, again, customers of modern requirements, they use ADO. So you might be learning what are some other applications that can really be connected to that requirements lifecycle, and how do you build out that connectivity, like you said, without spending countless resources on developers or multiple different SaaS applications. So that's excellent. So that's the kind of the current landscape, and just maybe quickly around the future of that kind of automation. Is there anything you'd like to tease, for the people here today, or anything you'd like to share on that front?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I think the power that we're trying to harness is the following. Imagine you had five Einsteins at your fingertips, and what would you do with it? If you had five Einsteins as your assistants, what would you do with it? Right? What would you get them to do for you? Okay. And you can imagine that you could get a lot of things done because you have that intelligence available to you. What we're trying to do with Codeless One, and from the very inception, and it's just been accelerated over time, is how can I interface in a more natural way so that I can ask Codeless One to do things um, in a conversation or through prompts or through a couple of clicks, and have him go do the real work, do the hard work for me. And in our next major breakthrough that we are going to be announcing, we are going to be releasing a fully conversational app development model where you can talk to it, it'll build it, you can use it, and you can talk back to it, it'll fine tune it, and so on and so forth. So the ability to develop solutions that your business needs now, you can build it now and not have to do a business case, get the people and so on. As a product owner or a business analyst or a business owner, you can do this instantaneously through a conversational model. And that's the next big step for us. And again, we'll be doing a webinar on that soon, and make that available to our clients and prospects.
That's very exciting. It started out with us on a mouse clicking our way to an endpoint. Now we're going to be talking to the very machines that are helping us build these business solutions. So that's definitely very exciting. I know some of the folks today will share more about that upcoming webinar, but today's discussion is around workflow automation and the current landscape. Asif, thank you so much for those insights. So
For sure.
let's talk a little bit more about the current state of workflow automation. I'm sure some of the folks here today are already using maybe some cases of automation, and maybe you're trying to decide what are the best methods or approaches for that type of automation. So if we had to categorize it under a few umbrellas, well, it all started out with rule-based automation, which we'll dive a little further in very shortly, all the way to digital process automation. Now, if everyone could just take a quick glance at some of these categories, we would love to get your feedback, because it's very likely you're using some of this automation in your organization today. So can you let us know, how much workflow automation are you using? Is it just a little bit? Are you using it extensively? Maybe you're a fully autonomous organization run by bots. Who knows? We'd love to hear your feedback there. Okay, these are looks like we have a very diverse range of results here. And we'll give it about 30 more seconds, because I know I just saw a few people jump into the webinar and give you a chance to answer the poll. Okay. And just a few more seconds here. All right. So look, again, it looks like the results were very diverse there. About 30% had answered none to little, and then about 40% there's maybe some use cases you're using. So let's talk about what those use cases can look like. All right, the first one, rule-based. Now, it's very straightforward in the sense that it follows the if-then logic. Some of you folks are probably already using tools at your disposal today that have these simple automation capabilities, right? If it's a situation where the steps are sequential and they're very predictable, then this is probably the best use case. For example, our marketing team, whenever a potential customer fills out a form, they'll get a notification that the form was filled out. That would be a pretty straightforward scenario for rule-based automation. Now, the next stage here, and the major distinction between business process automation and rule-based, is if now you're trying to automate an entire process across different departments. And what does this really look like in practice? Well, let's take the scenario of you onboarding a new employee. When that employee is onboarded, they're going to need set up to the various systems. HR is going to have to administer that system. Payroll is going to need to set up the accounts payable for them, and then maybe they'll need to be sent modules. So now this is traditionally something that personnel or people in your organization would orchestrate. Well, now you could essentially automate this entire process across departments. Now, quick comments in chat. If somebody's already using business process automation today, or you'd like to share a use case, please drop it in the comment section. We'd love to hear, or maybe folks would like to learn more about how you're already using it. Okay, and then there's another category of automation called robotic process automation. Now, in this scenario, imagine bots being deployed on your system or application that reads information in a structured manner. Now, I like to use the industry example of a manufacturing company. A manufacturing company manufactures a product, but there's lots of different parts. So they have to manage all those vendors. And sometimes there could be thousands of invoices that come from these vendors because there's so many different SKUs and parts. Well, you could hire an accounts payable clerk to administer these invoices manually. But if your organization is at a certain scale or the business needs change, then it might not make sense to have somebody do it. You could automate this process, deploy the bots, extract that data from the invoice, as long as it's very structured, and then put it into your ERP system, right? That's a great example of robotic process automation. And now finally, where we've come today is digital process automation. This takes all of the elements of the different types of automation we already talked about, but it incorporates AI technology, no-code technology, and also the insights from the data that you have in your organization, right? This is really, think of it as it has an intelligent element to it. A use case that we're going to be showcasing live for the demo, or how the product Mao's going to be sharing with you shortly, is imagine you're a manufacturer, same scenario, you're building out a product and you're trying to get feedback from potential customers. Well, now you could submit forms, get that feedback from the customer, have AI analyze where that feature should be prioritized for your engineering team, and then have it be assigned automatically. So now there's that intelligent sorting element to it, which is probably, I would say, the most advanced state of automation here today. So in practice, since, if you're a business analyst or a product owner and you're coming here from modern requirements, well, that end-to-end process can look like this. You're managing requirements currently on ADO, but your ticketing system is disconnected. You're probably familiar with some of the tools here you see on your screen right now to manage those tickets in those projects. Well, now you can take records and information from all those systems and have Codeless ONE orchestrate those workflows for you. So now we can do things like receipt issue reporting on bugs for the product, customer feature requests, and then use AI to analyze those. So then there's that automation element in place. So conceptually, this is what this looks like, an end-to-end process automation with ADO and with some of the tools that you can consolidate into Codeless ONE. Why don't we dive a bit deeper? I think most of the people here today want to see exactly what that looks like in practice. So I would love to invite Mao, our head of product. She just built an incredible workflow automation that she'll share more about. But Mao, the floor is all yours.
Sure. Thank you, Marcus. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today. I'm very excited to dive into the demonstration of no-code workflow automation. And just a little bit about myself. I originally come from a medical and data analytics background, and now I am the product owner of Codeless ONE. And like many of you, I manage requirements. I work closely with engineering, QA, sales, marketing, and also manage to handle client feedback. I think we all agree that how crucial it is to have a smooth process, which means everyone gets the right information at the right time without delay and unnecessary manual work. And of course, now with AI, we can take that a step further using AI to automate tedious tasks. For example, handle data processing, pattern recognition, or other complex tasks, which you will see in this demonstration. That's what this webinar is all about. And given that, please allow me to share my screen. And also I'm going to turn off my camera. All right. First, let's start with a quick overview to Codeless ONE. As Asif and Marcus mentioned, Codeless ONE is an intuitive no-code software development platform that accelerates business application development. Instead of months or years, we enable organizations to build and deploy applications in days and weeks. We've built a lot of solutions for different aspects of business, from, for example, ticketing to project management, event management, sales management, to streamline routine requirements work. More importantly, all without writing a single line of code. For today's demonstration, I want to show you a product feedback management app I built to streamline how we handle feature requests as well as product issues from our users. I know some of the audiences here come from the medical device industry, so I designed this application with that use case in mind. However, this is just one example. You can easily build a solution that is customized for other industries, other use cases, for example, automotive, technology, pharma, insurance, and so on. As a product owner, I use an application like this to track all my feature requests, monitoring the progress, the status, and also manage tasks visually using a Gantt chart view. I can also upload attachment or check history, who made what changes at which point in time. Sometimes I also use a Kanban board to manage my tasks and keep all my knowledge base organized, as well as stay on top of, for example, all my service level agreement. The dashboarding here really gives me a high-level view, a bird's view of everything happening to my product. And also reporting for reporting purposes. So I see this application not just as a tool for managing feedback, but as an extension of my requirements management solution, because it connects feedback directly to requirements and all the way to development to make sure we actually use customer needs to shape the product roadmap. If you have attended one of our past webinars, you might already be familiar with how easy it is to build applications in Codeless ONE. For example, I put this one together in about an hour. And within our organization, as Asif mentioned, we built roughly 10-20 interconnected solutions to cover pre-sales, post-sales, product management, engineering, and almost every client touchpoint to just better serve our clients. Now let's come to today's focus, which is workflow automation. This application is integrated with Azure ADO. So in just a few moments, you will see how a client request moves through the system and gets turned into work items in ADO automatically. Of course, I believe we may have Jira users on the call with us. Yes, a solution like this can be easily integrated with Jira or other work item management system. Now, let's see this workflow in action. Here in Codeless ONE, you can create public forms that could be embedded on your website, or you can share via email. No matter you're gathering feedback for a new product or managing ongoing improvements or collecting bugs, these forms are very handy to collect input from your different stakeholders. Now, let's do this exercise together. We're going to submit a feature request. I'm going to provide some basic information here. And here I'm going to select the device for which I want to add a feature. So here, for example, I'm going to select the automated blood pressure monitor and assume I am a doctor. And provide some descriptions. Let's say, for example, for that blood pressure monitor, I need an automated critical vitals alert. Provide some description. We need an alert that automatically detects critical changes in patient vitals and alerts the doctor right away. So now, once I'm ready, I'm going to click Submit. So first, in Codeless ONE, you can customize, the content of the notification, right? Include summary that matters the most, which just makes it easier for me to act quickly. And I think this is something Azure does not offer out of the box right now. And if I go back to the system, as you could see, the moment the request is submitted, it gets logged into our system in real time. So there is no manual data entry required. Also, the status of the request has been changed to initial review. Normally, when we get a request or a bug, we would analyze it or clarify details, look for potential risks, which is quite a manual process. But here's the cool part. Right now, we're actually using AI to handle the initial analysis. Here, I have configured AI to check two key aspects. First, for example, I really want to understand what is the user's essential need. And also, is there details I need to pay attention to, or there's assumptions I need to clarify at the early stage. Also, I want to know more about what is actually the clinical benefits. Now, let me try to refresh to see if AI has provided us the analysis. Cool, great. AI has already processed the request and also delivered the initial analysis. Of course, this is just one example, but let's take a quick look at the quality of the output. Here, basically, AI is saying, oh, we need this feature that can detect critical changes in patient vitals. And here, we should consider a few details or assumptions, as well as what is actually the improved patient outcomes or the clinical benefits. I think AI has done a good job. And now that AI has completed the initial recommendation, we have the flexibility to manually override or fine-tune the results. While AI helps us surface key insights or the initial analysis, we're always in control. Now the next step, say a compliance check is required. So I can simply turn the status from initial review to regulatory review. This will further trigger the workflow to provide initial regulatory analysis. Here, for example, I want to know, does this feature really modify the intended use according to some FDA standard? Or does this feature, from a data privacy, data security perspective, involve collecting, transmitting, or storing patient data? Now, instead of manually reviewing every details, going through documents and cross-checking regulations, we can use AI to handle the initial assessment. Now, let me try to refresh. Yeah, great. AI has provided us the initial regulatory analysis. So here I am not going to cover the details, but I think we can imagine how much time this could normally take if we do it manually.
So Mao, I just want to jump in really quickly here because I think this is very impressive. So just for the folks here on the webinar today, if you had to recap up to this point, then it sounds like you triggered the workflow, AI read and analyzed the components of that data, and then basically came up with this this review here that you see below. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent.
I
Well,
think
no, that's go ahead.
yes, yeah. I think we can maybe put a pause here for people to provide us the feedback. They can simply drop a comment or emoji, or if you have any questions, just type in the box, and we will try to answer at the end of the webinar.
Excellent. Yeah, feel free to drop your comments here based on what you've seen with the workflow so far. If you'd like to understand how it works, I would love to get your feedback here.
Yeah, and just one quick thing to note that this application you're looking at was created in Codeless ONE, and it was created obviously within hours, including this workflow automation in it, right? So this everything you're looking at right now is a function of Codeless ONE, right? So now your people that are using ADO or any other system need a platform where your customers can come, your PMs can come, your other stakeholders can come and engage. This becomes that platform. And this is what I was talking about earlier about the 360-degree around ADO or Jira or whatever other systems you might be using.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks there, Asif. Mao, if you'd like to continue here with the workflow, and then we can showcase the entire automation process here.
Sure, yeah. And of course, this two-step initial analysis is just one example. You can fully design your workflow to check for anything that is relevant to your requirements. For example, it could be security risks, legal compliance, data privacy concerns, or even technical feasibility. So my conclusion here is consider to use AI where it is of course feasible and adds the most value. And of course, I think here people might actually ask the question, how much does really AI really know about my product? So first, I think we can set the initial AI analysis to do some simple work like rewrite, summarize, or check key factors like completeness, risk, or dependencies. But as you feed more data into the system, whether uploading your product specifications or let the machine read your historical requirements, the AI's analysis will become even more precise. All right, and now let's continue. So now, once this two-step initial analysis is done, the team may need to decide what should be the next step. And since the rule here could get quite complex, a decision table will make it a lot easier to make decisions. I think a lot of BAs and POs here are already very familiar with this decision table approach. Here, for example, say when the business impact is high, if it's a new feature request, technically it's feasible, urgency-wise is high, then our recommendation would be prioritize for development. So in workflow, we are here simply use decision table to map out different conditions and outcomes. And you can use decision table to streamline a lot of flows. For example, task assignment, bug assignment, handling security reviews, or evaluating, say, compliance risks. And as you could see, the rules here are just super easy to define. And again, there's no coding required. Now let's go back to the system. Once the initial analysis is complete, we can seamlessly pass the request from Codeless ONE to your requirements portal, say Azure ADO. I simply updated the status to engineering review. Normally, we do this handoff via email or Teams message. Well, that works. It comes with a few challenges. First, there could be delays. What if someone forgets to send the email, or if it's sitting in someone's inbox, the process gets delayed. We also have, traceability issues because the systems are scattered, which means it's harder to track what is actually the decision or the progress of the feature which is requested by that client. I think that is what people mean by, data silos. When data is trapped in different systems, they don't communicate with each other. And also, finally, there's extra work for teams. For example, use my team, for example, every time we get a request or a bug, we will let the QA or the BA rewrite or restructure the request properly, even before letting the engineers to start to look at it seriously. So that's the time spent on documentation even before we start to solve the actual problem. So how can we fix this? I think the answer goes to automation and AI. And now let me refresh ADO. As you could see, our workflow has already created 3 work items automatically for us based on that feature request, including a feature, a user story, and a requirement. If I go inside of the feature, we can see the AI has already drafted some initial requirements for the engineers. So as requirements, this way engineers get a complete summary. You can configure AI to, say, provide some business impact, proposed approach, compliance check, or acceptance criteria right inside of ADO or Jira. Now the data has flowed quite a bit. I hope you're still with me. And the last step is that we want to make sure the right teams are notified once the development is complete. For example, say the construction of this feature is now complete. I want to automatically notify, say, the product team, the sales team, and the marketing team so they can prepare for the next step, whether it's updating documentation, training sales team, or planning a launch campaign. So I simply change the status to complete, and this time I'm actually trigger the workflow from ADO itself. Now, if we go back to Codeless ONE system, go back to the original request, and go to the task tab. Now, as you can see, the AI is already doing work to create some tasks for teams. So, for example, AI has created 3 tasks which are actually linked to the original request. So we can notify, the sales team and the marketing team, and those tasks will show up on their Kanban board or a Gantt chart automatically. So we can capture the end-to-end operations here. And since we have a bit more time, I'm going to cover one last thing, which is time-triggered workflows. I find this super useful. Now, let's say if a feature is requested and is marked as complete after, for example, 30 days, I want the system to automatically check for any open tickets that is related to that feature. And if open tickets exist, the system will basically loop through each one and checking for, you can come up with criteria to check the status, the priority, and trigger the follow-up action accordingly. So here we can set up those time trigger workflow. So every week 8 in the morning, I'm going to loop through some of my existing tasks, requirements, and so on. Now, I'd like to have a recap for what we have seen so far. By automating the flows, we create a smooth end-to-end process from the very beginning, a feature request coming, to development and to launch. AI plays a very key role in terms of analyzing and structuring the information for the team. In many requirements management use cases, no matter it is software, hardware, or process development, we do observe a lot of scattered process that can eat up your team's time. And I believe this challenge isn't just about managing requirements in tools like ADO or Jira. It's a broader issue that affects multiple aspects of your operations and the time to market. That's where Codeless ONE come in with the no-code app development and workflow automation. It just helps us to bring everything together, streamline our processes, and keep things move fast. At the end of the day, automation makes our life easier. What I have demonstrated here is how a no-code solution can be used to build, for example, this feature request management system that complements your requirements management process. But this approach isn't limited to just that. It can also be adapted to other use cases in your organization, including your unique processes, such as, for example, tracking compliance approvals, managing customer support ticket, as well as streamlining your internal workflow requests. And all right, that marks the end of my demo, and I will hand it back to Marcus. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much for showing that workflow, Mao. So, in summary here, because I think we covered a lot of different parts, essentially there. Bear with me for one moment, folks. Yeah, so I think we covered a massive workflow there, right? From people that are managing requirements on modern requirements in Azure DevOps to now building out the apps, and maybe Mao, you can kind of help provide some insight here. How long did it take you to build that app on Codeless ONE?
Yeah, I built the entire solution in about an hour.
Okay, so the app itself only took an hour to build, and these apps can be customized depending on the requirements of your organization. Like Asif mentioned earlier, whether you're building out a ticketing solution that you'd like to connect to ADO and your requirements, you can do that very simply and efficiently on Codeless ONE. Okay, thanks for sharing that, Mao. We're going to dive into a more concentrated Q&A very shortly. But look, everyone saw the workflow earlier. I think feedback, again, is really important. So let's jump into our second poll of the webinar here today. A lot of folks, you know what automation is, but what's stopping you today from introducing automation into your organization? Is it maybe there's not enough tools or not knowing sure which tool to use? Is it the integration piece? Because maybe that's the tricky part. Or maybe the business logic is just so complex and hasn't really been mapped out properly yet, right? So which one is it? Feedback is very important to us. We're going to keep the poll open for another 15 to 20 seconds or so as I see a couple more votes trickle in. Okay, so it looked like almost about 50% of our audience here said they weren't sure where to start. That's definitely a very common issue that we come across when we talk to different organizations and stakeholders. There's a lot of moving parts. So with that being said, we want to make sure that, towards the end of the webinar, one of the key takeaways that you can take from the session is a better understanding of how you can get started. with that being said, we're going to conclude the poll here and dive into an open Q&A. So we're going to dive into an open Q&A, and Asif and Mao are going to be here to answer some questions as we covered a very comprehensive automation here today. We want to make sure that we can help fill in any gaps here in case some of you folks are curious. So I see here a question. What's the typical implementation time for a workflow like this on Codeless One? Mao, Asif, maybe you'd like to jump in and provide some insights for our folks today.
Yeah. So building the workflow from a technical perspective, as Mao mentioned, doesn't take a lot of time. And whether it took an hour, if it took 10 hours, it would be immaterial. It's such a small amount of time. What takes time is to know what you want to do. That's where the real heavy lifting is done. So if you know you need to do A, B, and C, and you're clear in that vision, then getting it implemented is a relatively quick process. Even if you're learning on the fly or you're working with us and we are showing you how to do it, uh, getting that part is the build part is easy. The requirement part still needs to be done. You still need to know what you want your Codeless One app to look like. Where does it integrate with? When something happens, what do you want to do? What do you want to have AI do? What systems do you want to integrate with? So all that requirement stuff still has to be done. Yeah, so that's how I would approach that.
Thank you, Asif. And to piggyback on that question, because we just had another one come in that plays a part of the equation here, integrations with other systems can be a challenge. It can be tricky. How can we integrate with systems like ServiceNow, Jira, or Azure DevOps in this case?
Yeah, we provide integrations with a lot of systems. So there's integration available with hundreds of systems. And in addition to that, if you have custom apps for which nobody would have a predefined integration, then we support we support REST API and event hooks, so you can integrate both ways with other systems as well, right? So there's this pre-existing integrations available at scale, lots of systems, and custom integrations are available as well.
Excellent. Looks like we've got time for one more question here. Mr. Felice had asked, can no-code solutions be integrated with legacy systems or existing enterprise software? I think, we get that question a lot too. What's the difference? Like, is it harder to integrate with a legacy system, or is it easier with enterprise software today? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think that there's two ways of looking at legacy system. One is a modernization project, right? So you take your old system and you say, now I want to create a modern application in Codeless One, and you want to sort of migrate your application to a modern app, right? So in that case, you're working with Codeless One and implementing your legacy into Codeless One in a much more rapid fashion. So modernization is one use case of Codeless One. The other is you may have a legacy system, but you want to build new modules on it. You don't want to replace it, but you want to extend it. So now you will use Codeless One to build that out. And Codeless One in turn would have the integration into the legacy system. So the data is communicating, but Codeless One becomes the front end for the newer application. So those are two different sort of approaches of doing this.
Okay, so the integrations are definitely possible. It just depends on the unique needs of that organization and basically structure and a blueprint on how to do it. So excellent. That sounds great there. So look, folks, I think we're coming to that time at the webinar. in summary here, I know Asif earlier mentioned there was a very exciting product roadmap for Codeless ONE in addition to what you've seen today with that automation. Is there maybe one thing that the folks here in the webinar can take away when it comes to what they can look forward to, let's say even in the next quarter or two with Codeless ONE?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's really to do with the app that Mao showed. Imagine you're looking at that application and you want to change your workflow, and you can just speak to the system and it would make the changes for you, right? It would update the UI, it change the workflow, it change the user security for you, just through a conversational model, right? So now you can do that with a few clicks. Soon it will become just conversational, right? So really, to me, the main takeaway from this webinar I would have for you is, so look at your business, right, and see how you want to sort of extend your systems. As in this example that Mao showed, how do you extend ADO and build a 360-degree view around it, right? Or you may have other similar applications, and you want to build a customer 360-degree view for your business, or whatever the case may be. So I think those are the use cases you want to think about. And Marcus, maybe you can talk about how people can reach out to us to sort of engage with us to see how we can help them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, from how folks said, answered the poll earlier, it sounds like they're really overwhelming majority of people answered they weren't sure where to start when it came down to the automations. So one of the things that we'd like for folks to take away from is if you're unsure where to start and you need essentially some guidance, book a scoping session with us. We'll sit down with one of our pre-sales engineers. We'll map out what that workflow would look like, and then we can chat about essentially which type of automation best fits your organization. We know that automation, there's a lot of different moving parts and it can be complex, but we're here to help you simplify that process. So again, everyone, thank you so much for attending today's webinar on breaking boundaries with no-code workflow automation. If you'd like to book a scoping session, we have a QR code here where you can book an appointment with one of our team members. If you'd like to scan the QR code, it'll bring you directly to the form where you can fill out your details and a member of our team will reach out to you. So again, from everyone across the globe, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to host this webinar, and stay tuned for the future webinar coming up from click to conversation, as that is the future. Thanks again for joining, everyone. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.